Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game pod from the Timberwolves elimination game. Game 5 of the conference finals, lost to the Mavs. We'll break down what happened in this one, just how incredible was Luka Doncic, and what does this game mean as a capper on the season, if anything. We'll talk about all that on the show here today. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Happy Friday, happy weekend. And unfortunately, the end of the Timberwolves season came Thursday night, of course, in the blowout loss to the Mavs in Game 5 of the conference finals. This is the post-game pod. We're mostly going to focus on the game specifically. I don't want to, wax too eloquently about the offseason at this point. We've got lots of upcoming shows. A reminder off the top, we are still daily throughout free agency, like throughout the month of June, throughout the month of July. This is a daily show. And even after that, we'll be at least 3 shows a week throughout August and September too. So lots to get to this offseason. But today's show is going to be mostly about Game 5, takeaways from Game 5, and I guess maybe a little more broadly the series, but more specifically this Game 5 loss. There are some things we can take from it. There are not a whole lot of positives, but there are things I want to get to. And then next week, we're going to start to really dig into this offseason. The Wolves have a first-round draft pick. The draft is like 3 weeks away. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to get to here in the next few weeks. But today, we're going to talk mostly about Game 5. So, big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon at Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right. So there's a lot that happened in this game that was not great. I mean, the Wolves obviously ended up losing by 21. They trailed by as many as 36 in this game, which in a do or die Game 5 situation, lose or go home, or lose or stay home in this case, the effort level is certainly concerning. But I will say, the thing that set this whole thing off was Luka Doncic being incredible. And that to me is the headline of this game. It's far more about Luka than it is about the Timberwolves not showing up. And it's both, clearly. But Luka Doncic was so incredible in the first quarter. And I think this gets oversaid and overplayed, this sort of thing. Like, he took their souls in the first quarter of this game. Luka Doncic was incredible. He had 20 first quarter points. I believe he had 4 threes in the first quarter. Those first 2 that he hit from the deep, left wing, the first one, Ant was playing off him a little bit because, you're not picking up. I don't care who you are. Nobody's picking you up 30 feet. Even Steph Curry's not getting picked up 30 feet on, what was it, their second possession of the game? No, yeah, their second possession of the game. He made a short 2 in his first possession, first shot of the game. The Wolves scored on their first 2 possessions. They're up 4-2. And then Luka hits a 31-foot 3 on the left side of the floor. Next, or a couple trips down later, Dallas scored on their next possession. And then next time down, the Wolves were down 7-6. After Ant had the putback, Jaden had he had a couple of weird attempts early in this game, but Ant had a putback, so they're down 7-6. Luka hits another 30-footer, left side of the floor. This time Ant was actually up on him, and he just stepped back and knocked it down. It stepped back and knocked it down. It was crazy. And then the next time down, Luka hits a 2-pointer. And then he hits another one in the paint just a couple of minutes later, and then eventually he hit another couple of threes. I'm going to see how he hit more. Yeah, at the end of with 3 minutes left, he hits another 32-footer. Then he hits a 25-footer. It didn't matter what the Wolves did. I think he missed 1 shot in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And at that point, when this thing all of a sudden, it went from like going back and forth, and midway through the first quarter, it was a 4-point game. Actually, Conley hit a 3, and this was a 1-point game at the 6-minute mark of the first quarter. Actually, yeah, even within that, actually the Wolves tied it with 5:43. Rudy Gobert had an and one because, I mean, the Mavs kept trying to guard him with Luka. The Wolves kept going to him, and it made sense. So it's a tie game at the 5:43 mark, and then all of a sudden, Luka just goes nuts, and it's a 16-point game by the end of the half. And things really fell apart in the final few moments there. The Mavs scored the last couple buckets of the quarter to take it from a 12-point game to a 16-point game. And the Wolves just never recovered. The Luka punch was too much for the Wolves. And that's a credit to Luka Doncic, and it is a bit of an indictment on how the Wolves responded to it. And it was unusual because, and we've certainly seen the Wolves fold up their tents before. I mean, we saw what happened, in games 3 and 4 against the Nuggets. And, or I guess one of those was a closer game, 3, 4, and 5. There were 2 of those that were complete blowouts against the Nuggets. We saw them do it in game 82 against Phoenix, which is the taste everyone had in their mouths leading into the playoffs that led to odd expectations for a number 3 seed that was in the 1 seed until the final week of the season. We've seen them do that, but we've also seen them counterpunch. We've also seen the game 6 blowout win over Denver. We also saw them down 20 plus in the third quarter in game 7 on the road against the defending champs, the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic, and come back and win. We've seen this team counterpunch time and time again. And it was just weird to not see it happen in the last game of the season, the last shot for them to keep the season going. And especially coming off a solid game 4 performance, solid, not a great performance. They won game 4, and the first 4 games of the series were all close games. I saw the stat on TNT. This was the closest or the lowest point differential among the first 4 games of a conference final. I believe it was in NBA history. It was definitely NBA history. It was either Western Conference Final or Conference Finals, period. Like 14 or 16 points total over the first 4 games. So this was a close series. So to see the Wolves go out in this fashion is, I would say, 75% a testament to Luka Doncic and just how incredible he was, and 25% the lack of a response from Minnesota. Because honestly, you can respond how you want, but if Luka is going to be this version of Luka, like, I'm sorry, like, they're not going to lose to the Celtics if Luka plays like this. Now, remember, game 4, Luka was just okay. He wasn't great. So if you get game 5 Luka in the finals, like, that thing could end quickly. Like, the Celtics have been the best team in the league start to finish, but obviously Dallas has had a much tougher road in the playoffs with the Clippers, OKC, and now the Wolves than what Boston's had to deal with. So now there's also the school of thought, like the Wolves coming off the Nuggets series, that wears down Dallas a little bit, and more so than Boston. Each has injuries to big men. We'll see how Porzingis looks, how Lively continues to try and bounce back from the neck/head injury. Anyway, I don't want to turn this into a finals preview, but the point is, Luka was incredible, and it was going to be an uphill battle from the second Luka started draining 30-footers, which was basically the start of the game. We knew this was going to be a tough game for Minnesota. It's not absolving them of their lack of a response. It's just saying that it's more about Luka than it is about anything else. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the other things I noticed that I thought were key in this game. And then we'll do studs and duds here at the end, as we always do in the last post-game pod of the 23-24 season. So we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action when you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the playoff action still and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the postseason. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball and hockey playoffs still ongoing today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance, so if your entries will stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits in the first half and does not return in the second, PrizePicks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. The code is LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, Pick less. It's that easy. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, a couple more key points here from this Game 5 loss for the Wolves. We talked about Luka. We talked about the Wolves' lack of urgency. The other thing that contributed to that in the first quarter, because, I mean, like, it was weird to see a team score 35 in a quarter against the Wolves, and that's too many against anybody. But, up until that final push in the last minute or so, it was hovering around 30 points. Like, Luka went crazy. There were some decent defensive possessions mixed in there for Minnesota. But the open misses from the three-point line ended up being a massive deal in this game. And I know that ultimately for the game, the Wolves had a nearly respectable 31% from outside the arc. Dallas shot the lights out at 44%. And we talked about this on, I think it was probably Thursday's show, Wednesday or Thursday. I talked about Dallas was due for something of a regression in terms of three-point shooting. They had guys like Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington. PJ Washington's a good three-point shooter. But as a team, Dallas's volume of corner three-point shots in the regular season was huge, but their success rate was bad. They were 28th in the NBA this season in corner three-point shooting percentage, and we saw that go the complete opposite direction, both against OKC and against Minnesota. And I still wouldn't be shocked if that comes back to bite them in a game or two in the finals. I wouldn't be shocked at all. In fact, I'd expect it because, I mean, I know Derrick Jones Jr. was 1 of 2. It's not like he was shooting 7 in a game, but for him to go 1 of 2, PJ Washington to be as cold as he has been for stretches and then come through and go 2 for 5 in this game. The point is, Dallas came through there and the Wolves didn't. They're 44% from outside the arc. The Wolves were 31, but I believe they hit 2 threes in the entire first half. A lot of, much of the rest of their three-point makes were toward the end when the game was all but decided. I mean, Wendell Moore Jr. hit 1 in garbage time. Kyle Anderson hit 1 during catch, Ant hit 4 threes in this game. I think 2 of them were when the Wolves were basically just playing catch up in the second half and launching anytime they got a sliver of daylight on the perimeter. But in the first quarter, Cat missed a couple open threes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker missed an open 3. I don't know, basically everybody missed open threes. Conley made a couple. He also missed a couple open threes. They just had these opportunities. Jaden missed a couple. Jaden took a terrible long 2 early in the shot clock. I think it was the second possession of the game. But the open threes are really the point here. As silly as it is to call a blowout loss in Game 5 of the conference finals, be it's a make or miss league. That was part of what put the Wolves behind the 8 ball. And that matters. That can be part of it. It could be Luka being crazy good and hitting ridiculous shots, contested 30-footers. He did do that. The Wolves being just demoralized by that. But also, if you make some of these open threes, this is an 8-point game going to the second quarter, and then you feel okay about it. Hey, we took Luka's first punch. Now he's going to take a rest at the start of the quarter. We think we could come through and make this thing a game. We can be within a couple possessions at halftime, realistically, get our typical third quarter bump. That to me, if they make a couple of those, and this is call it a 35-27 game instead of 35-19, it's a completely different, the complexion of the game changes completely. And I would say that continued in the second quarter. The Mavs, the second quarter is obviously when the Mavs, this thing ballooned to well over 20 plus, and they took complete control of this game. But along the way, if you hit a couple of those shots, I mean, instead it was Kyrie hits the first bucket of the second quarter. Kleba hits a 3-pointer, the only 3-pointer hit in the series. And then the Wolves didn't make a 3. Nas was 0 for 4 from outside the arc. Nas missed a 3 along there. Cat missed another 3 in there. It just missing these wide open shots compounded the issue of Luka being Luka, and the Wolves already not playing with the requisite, call it energy, you need in an elimination game. And all of the above is true. I thought that was huge. Another thing, I actually thought there were stretches in this game, and I know this sounds insane because they gave up 124 and 69 points in the first half. there were stretches where the defense was good and Luka was just Luka. Like it's not hard to go back and find clips of the Wolves picking Luka up high. Like they did mix in some drop today, and as I thought they should have, they're good at it. And it, last game, like game 4, Kyrie Irving was legit affected by the Wolves playing drop. And they gave him the business. In this game, the Wolves were picking him up higher. Rudy was coming up higher, and as the game went on, they did it more and more and more because he was just like shooting over whoever was covering him when it was single coverage. And Luka still just carved him up. Like he would get Ant or Kyle Anderson or whoever on his back, dribble into the paint, occasionally shoot it. Occasionally he would throw a lob. And the Wolves defense was there. There were a couple possessions, a handful of possessions where the backside helped. The low man wasn't getting there, whether it was Cat or whoever. Yes. But like they also had a few good possessions mixed in there where they knocked the ball away. And like this was, again, I go back to how I started. 75% about Luka. And Kyrie was good too, I should point out. But it was the Luka punch in the first quarter that really did it. And they both ended up with 36, I believe. Yeah, they both had 36 points. But it was the Luka first quarter that killed the Wolves. And then along the way, it was these Kyrie, like, just when you think you're making a little bit of a run, they get it to 21 in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, whatever it was. Kyrie hits an open 3 because you leave Kyrie wide open because you're so worried about Luka. And that's how Kyrie got a lot of his points in this game, was they were so loaded up on Luka Doncic that, to have Kyrie as your second scorer, which brings this full circle to a conversation we'll have later about what the Wolves need in the offseason. And actually, if you listen to the postcast, Tyler Metcalf and I joined Luke Inman following the game. It's actually the episode before this on the Locked On Wolves audio feed, or if you're on YouTube over at Locked On Sports Minnesota, we did a live postcast afterwards, myself and Tyler from Canasupis joining Luke Inman. And we both talked about the need for a secondary creator in the backcourt. And I talked about this on Locked On Sports today on Friday's show as well. Over there was they need somebody besides Ant that can create from the perimeter. And Mike Conley isn't necessarily that guy anymore. Not that he's not a valuable piece, and he is. But they need one other guy who they can go to, which, of course, that was the idea behind, like, say, Jalen Noel last year or Shake Milton this year, and that didn't shake out, if you will. Pun definitely intended. Where do the Wolves go for that? And again, plenty of time this offseason to talk about it. And they're not necessarily going to get a Kyrie to put next to, they're not going to find whatever, the Wolves version of Kyrie would be necessarily, unless you're going to reshuffle the bigs, right? You're going to trade Cat or Nas and find somebody who can play that quote unquote Kyrie role. I think that would be a challenging thing to do. But we'll dig into that certainly this offseason. But that in this game, now the other difference here is that Luka also still had 36 points. It's not like he was deferring all game long. He only had 5 assists in this game. Luka was scoring a bunch early. Now he had like 20 of his 36 in the first quarter, but he was also making the right reads. And there's the difference between, this version, the 25-year-old Luka Doncic, and the 23-year-old Luka Doncic 2 years ago in the conference finals, who lost when the Mavs got to the conference finals before anybody thought they should have. They retooled the rest of the roster over the last 2 years. And now 25-year-old Luka, who is still remarkably young for how good he is, knows what to do when teams load up on him and understands, we could go back and look at his game log from 2 years ago, and it was good, but it wasn't good enough. And the Mavs kind of lost in unceremonious fashion in the conference finals, similar to what the Wolves did this year to Luka. So hopefully we don't have to wait 2 years. Hopefully the Wolves are back in the spot next year. Again, a bigger conversation for a later day, loaded Western Conference. It's going to be much, it's not quite that easy. But the point is, it was the combination of Luka being Luka and being that much better than the Wolves' best player. Not a slight on 22-year-old Anthony Edwards, but a commendation of how good 25-year-old Luka Doncic is. And then he had this second guy. He had Kyrie Irving, and Ant didn't have that second guy. I know it's supposed to be Karl-Anthony Towns, and this is where I put some blame on the coaching staff. We can talk a little bit more about that here in a second, and then we'll do studs and duds. We'll get to all that here next as we close out the show today. Okay, coaching staff-wise, and this is specific to the series, but it's also something we've talked about all season. Well, Karl-Anthony Towns ended up with an okay line, and I think we could argue, we'll talk about studs and the duds here in a second. I think we could certainly argue he was the Wolves' best all-around player on the floor in this game. He had a tough series, and this was a matchup that I thought he was going to be key. And I said it in the Phoenix series. I thought he was going to be a key to that series. And obviously, he played great defense on Durant. He was great against Jokic in the second round, and also had games where he was really good offensively too. But I thought in this series specifically, he'd be key because Dallas should not have had an answer for him on either end of the floor. And Daniel Gafford was great as a rim protector in the series, no question. He only had one block in this game, but he had a lot of affected shots. To a lesser extent, not to a lesser extent, Derek Lively, when he was on the floor, obviously he missed game 4, but he was also really good at protecting the rim. But neither one of those guys, I don't think, would consistently guard Karl-Anthony Towns on the low block. And I'm not suggesting the Wolves play a mid-90s offense, but what I'm saying is Karl-Anthony Towns, when he had his best game of the series, he did get a couple back-to-the-basket looks in game 4 where he, got going a bit and then knocked down a bunch of threes late. And again, I don't want to sound like Charles Barkley and Shaq because I'm not them, and I'm not trying to make that same point. But in that moment, like that micro point can be true for a player like Cat. Now, I think it's more about the shot going in, the first couple shots going in, than it is about the quality of shot. Because you could argue a semi-open 3 for him is it's certainly a more efficient shot overall than any sort of a post-up, unless it's against one-on-one against a mismatch for Cat. And maybe there's a level of, wanting to get him that open 3, whatever it is, get him a good shot. And I said this actually, I think on Thursday's show, get a look for Cat early in the game, get him going. I thought there was opportunity throughout this series that they could have got him touches with his back to the basket somewhere, whether it's, free throw line extended, mid post, low post, whatever it is. He was playing outside in a lot. And while I think that's okay, a lot of it was just asking him to attack. And it wasn't necessarily, they weren't like running pin downs to get him open threes as much as like, I love them to do that. I'd love them to get him more touches in the post, try and create a mismatch there, force Dallas to eventually double him and force him into a rotation. We saw in the Denver series, Denver refused to double Karl-Anthony Towns, and he woke up in a couple of games, and then they had to, and that opened up more stuff up. I blame the coaching staff for an inability to get Karl-Anthony Towns cleaner looks. Some blame goes to Cat for simply missing shots. We saw that throughout this series when he was open. But I also think he had to work really hard, like in this game, to get his 28 points. He missed a lot of open threes, but a lot of his twos were really difficult. And I think the Wolves could have done a better job of scheming him open to get him some of those additional looks. So both can be true here. I think the coaching staff can shoulder some blame. And I think Cat has to be, in some cases, a little more assertive, and in other cases, just make open shots. That'll be a topic of this offseason too, because as I alluded to earlier, like if they can find a secondary creator, secondary playmaker, secondary scorer in the backcourt to go along with Anthony Edwards, the easiest way to do that would be a Karl-Anthony Towns trade. And we'll talk about that too. I don't think they'll trade Karl-Anthony Towns, but it's absolutely a possibility. And if you're then shuffling like your higher usage second option from the front court to the backcourt, and both of those options are in the backcourt, now you do have more of a Mavs construction where, Rudy Gobert is the Daniel Gafford, the very highly priced Daniel Gafford in this situation, and obviously a better defender overall. And then you shift the Karl-Anthony Towns usage and all that stuff from the front court to the backcourt. I mean, that's essentially what they'd be doing here. But then you also, the rest of the roster, I would argue, is still better than Dallas's. So, like, I don't know. I don't want to get into names too much here, but like Trae Young is a name that's out there. I don't love the idea of Trae Young. He's not as good as Kyrie Irving, but like that's a name that has been floated by some. Looking for somebody that could fit in the backcourt, like, I don't know. I don't want to get too far down this path. I've already got too far. We have lots of time to talk about this, but this is an example because the challenge of scheming shots for Towns, even though he can play on the perimeter, it's tough to put him in the post when Rudy's on the floor. And it goes back to the same reasons why people were detractors of the trade in the first place. I'm not saying it was like, oh man, I'm saying too many words here. They obviously got to the conference finals. We're nitpicking. They lost to one of the best 3 players in the world, to Luka Doncic in Dallas. The Wolves obviously did enough offensively and were incredible defensively all season to be one of the final 3 teams playing. That does matter. Okay. I don't want to like overshadow any of that, but clearly they didn't win the title, which is the ultimate goal. So you look at stuff and they have this roster crunch. So then how do these pieces get reshuffled, which is again, a lengthy topic we'll cover in a lot of different ways. But losing to a team like Dallas that has 2 backcourt creators with Kyrie and Luka and nobody in the front court that's a high usage guy, that kind of underscores it's in some ways not a parallel, but like an example of what this could look like for Minnesota. If Ant becomes the Luka-like player, then who becomes the Kyrie-like player? Who do they go find that could fit that role? And I think that's a legit thing to look at. Okay. Let's close the show here today by talking studs and duds. For Minnesota, I actually don't feel like anybody really deserves a stud in this game. Ant and Cat both had good lines, but a lot of that came playing catch up. Cat was the first guy to get to 10 points. He was the first guy to get to 20 points. I thought he was the best player on the floor for Minnesota. I already talked about him missing open threes. He was part of the problem early in the game in terms of missing those open shots. I thought he played with the passion and effort. He was one of very few guys that it seemed like was dialed up and ready to go from the start, which is, again, a problem in a win or go home game. And, Cat ended up with 28 on 9 of 20. He was 1 of 6 outside the arc, but he was 8 of 14 on twos, 9 of 10 at the line. He got to the line 10 times, which was great. 12 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, only 2 turnovers for Cat. And get this, he didn't commit a single personal foul in this game. A game after fouling out, where foul trouble was the story because he was incredible otherwise. Incredible, really good otherwise. He didn't commit a single personal foul in this game. And it's not because he wasn't trying. Again, I'll say this again. I thought he played as hard as anybody on the floor in this game. This was a good Cat game. It needed to be a great Cat game, especially because we got a mediocre Anthony Edwards game. But Cat's line ended up being a 28-12, 2 assists, 1 steal, 2 turnovers, no fouls in this game. Man, I don't know. I don't really have any other studs. I thought Jaden was fine. He was in foul trouble a lot. He ended up 2 of 4 outside the arc, but he missed a couple shots early that were tough looks. I think he shot the ball in the Wolves' first 2 possessions, and he only missed 3 shots in the game, and those were 2 of them. I don't know. Like there wasn't anybody else that was very good for Minnesota. Dud-wise, kind of ever like Nas sticks out as somebody who really didn't have a good game, and it's tough because we know he was pretty hot or cold in this playoffs. Like, he had a couple of incredible games, he had a couple of really bad games. He was quiet in the first 4, 5, 6 games of the playoffs overall. He only had 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting in this game, was 0 of 4 outside the arc, missed a couple of tough layups that he normally makes, 4 rebounds, but he had 3 turnovers in 27 minutes. So it was a rough Nas game. I would give him a dud. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and this is another, we'll talk about him throughout this offseason. We'll do actually player reviews for the season too over the course of the next, I don't know, couple of weeks. We always do that, where I'll spend at least a half show on every rotation player. Nickeil had a rough series. He was 0 of 2 in this game, 0 of 1 outside the arc. He missed a layup that he should have made, and he missed a wide open 3 in the first quarter. He did have a couple of steals, but he only played 14 minutes, and he was kind of an afterthought in this series after being such a big part of the Denver series and of the Phoenix series, for that matter. I mean, he was playing 30-plus minutes in a couple of those games, but a tough end of the season for Alexander Walker. I do want to point out, as we talk studs and duds, and I really only named 1 stud and 2 duds, Cat as a stud and Nas and Na as duds. I should note Ant's line, again, ended up nice because of the catch-up minutes, but he was too passive early. And Tyler Metcalf and I talked about this on the postcast. He did not look prepared to attack a double team early in the game. And in a game 5 win or go home situation, you have to do that. You have to have that from your stars. He ended up at 28, 9, and 6, 28 points on 18 shots, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, only 1 turnover, 4 of 6 outside the arc, got to the line 6 times, with 4 of 6 at the line. That line is okay. It's more than okay. It looks great in the box score. He didn't play great. I want a disclaimer here. This tweet is by Nick Wright. Not the biggest Nick Wright guy, but sometimes he makes good points on Twitter. Nick Wright posted, of course, from I don't know what's this show called. He's on FS1. Whatever the Nick Wright show is on FS1. But he tweeted out this stat. And I know we've heard stats similar to this kind of floating around, but this is big. Ant is the 6th player ever who averaged 25 points per game, was all NBA, and made the conference finals of the same season before his 23rd birthday. The only other players that have done it are Kobe Bryant in 2001, Amari Stoudemire in 2005, LeBron James in 2007, Derrick Rose in 2011. That was the MVP season for Rose before he tore his ACL. Kevin Durant in 2011, and Anthony Edwards. So nobody's done it in 13 years. And this is the sixth player ever who has done it. Now, of those guys, like LeBron's the second best player ever. Kobe and Durant are both top 15 players of all time. Derrick Rose won the MVP and probably, certainly would have been a Hall of Famer had he not torn the ACL when he did and messed up the knee when he did. And Amari Stoudemire, who was, incredible. He's the only one on that list that isn't like a clear-cut Hall of Fame guy. Otherwise, but I guess taking out the Rose injury. So that's a huge list to be on for Anthony Edwards. And I think some of this stuff we can get in the weeds on, like manipulating these numbers to make it look crazy. But like that's a pretty clean 25 points a game, all NBA and conference finals. It's an incredible season for Anthony Edwards. We should not overlook that. He's 22 years old, and all of the tweets and the stuff talking about his collapse, it's completely overblown. We'll see what he does to USA basketball. We'll talk, of course, more about that this summer at the Olympics. Hopefully it's a good thing, and the wear and tear for him isn't detrimental next season. We'll dig into some of that too. But an incredible season for Anthony Edwards. All right, lots to get to. We'll do player reviews next week. We'll get into cap stuff. We'll get into draft stuff here in a couple of weeks. I got a lot of research to do there. There's so much to talk about, and so excited to still be daily throughout June and July. So lots upcoming here. Make sure that you follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. A big thank you for those that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, you can catch the show everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can watch on Locked On Sports Minnesota, on Roku and Amazon Fire TV, and you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A sincere thank you to those of you that have been as your first listen throughout the season. I'd ask, please stay with us. Like I said, daily in June and July. Lots to get to this offseason. This is going to be a fun one. The Wolves could be active. If nothing else, they're going to run back one of the best 3 teams in the NBA this season. And Ant is on the ascension. So stick with us throughout the offseason. Looking forward to having you in the fold. A big thank you again for watching, for listening. And a reminder here that Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. And we'll catch you next time. Have a great weekend.